The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, thinking they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
So you remember 4 years ago, right about this time, when the pandemic had shut everything down, there was no live sports, and every Sunday night we look forward to The Last Dance, the 2 episodes that they would run, 2 hours of Michael Jordan and the Bulls going through their last season together, the 97-98 season. And what we would do on Monday and really throughout the week is talk about something that had happened, 25 years earlier? And so here we are now, and we've got sports going on. But you know what the number one topic is? And I can tell you this because I was in a big gathering of men last night. It's the Brady roast. That's what everybody's talking about right now. We got some crazy stuff happening in the NBA playoffs, and we'll get to what Minnesota did again last night. And the Knicks and the Pacers played a hell of a game before that. Nationals are playing well. Tom Boswell is gushing this morning, one of his rare columns since his retirement. He's popped his head up to say, hey, Nats are really good. And the Orioles have the best record in the American League. There are some things that are happening. Commanders open up rookie mini camp on Friday and all that, but this is what people are talking about. They're talking about the 3-hour roast on Netflix of Tom Brady, and it's like the reaction seems to be universal. Wow, I didn't think they would go that far. And the latest report is Gisele Bündchen is not happy about the jokes that were made about their marriage during the roast. She hasn't said anything publicly, but these are reports that have come out. And if you saw it, and I didn't see the whole thing, but I've seen some highlights of it, I can kind of understand that. And I think the universal reaction is, how the hell did Tom Brady allow this to happen to him? Brady's production company, and he's doing what the Mannings are doing. This is the smart thing. He helped to produce this, and he went into it with the understanding that anything was fair game, and it was. But, man, even the hardened of hardened are saying, I can't believe it came to that. Wow, how about that? And it was 3 hours, and I think people want more of that. So this is what happens in television. When you have something successful, it's going to spawn other types of roasts. I don't know. Could you do one for Peyton Manning? Yeah, I guess you could. Could you do one for Michael Jordan? No, Jordan wouldn't allow this. There are some who are thin-skinned and wouldn't let this happen. Could you do it for Charles Barkley? Yeah, you could probably do that. Sure. There are probably 20 or 30 people that would be good candidates for it. But everything that I've heard about it is that they knocked it out of the park, and we'll get some post-game on that. Jeff Ross, who hosted it, he was on with Rich Eisen yesterday and gave you some behind-the-scenes stuff, including that moment that a lot of people are talking about where there was a joke about Bob Kraft and massages, and Brady went up to Ross and seemed to say, cut that S out. You'll get what Ross says about that coming up in about 20 minutes. As for the NBA, I got home. Here's where I was last night, and it's a great thing that my buddy Tom Lavero does every year. It's called Cigars and Curveballs, and he has a fundraiser for the D.C. Grays. The D.C. Grays are in a wooden bat league. It's college kids who play a 2-month season. And they have teams like in Gaithersburg and Northern Virginia. And there's a team that I've seen a whole bunch of games over the years, taking my kids to many, many games there. Bethesda Big Train. It's a wonderful ballpark right in Cabin John, and it's really a great way to spend a summer evening. And the only D.C.-based team is the Grays. And Tom has done a great job of raising money for the Grays over the years, and he has this gathering every year. And last night, Davey Martinez was there. Mike Rizzo was there. They had some ex-Redskins there like Ken Harvey and John Booty, who played in the NFL with the Philadelphia Eagles and the Jets. And they had, people who are known throughout the industry gathering to have a good time and raise some money. And they auctioned off a whole bunch of stuff. Even Davey Martinez showed up with the jersey. Remember the jersey that they wore on Sunday? It's the first time they've worn him this year. He autographed that. They auctioned that off. They auctioned off a couple of bats and balls and cases of bourbon and stuff like that. And it was really a wonderful thing. They raised a lot of money. And it was great to be amongst all these other guys, and that's what we were talking about was the roast. But I did get home in time to see the second half of the Knicks and the Pacers, which was really entertaining basketball. And Jalen Brunson, my goodness, all the research that goes into drafting players. And Brunson played on a championship team at Villanova and was not a first-round pick, was taken in the second round by the Knicks, and he has been absolutely incredible in these playoffs. And last night he did it again, 14 of 26 from the field, and most importantly down the stretch, 14 of 14 from the line. He finished with 43 points. And they also got a really great game out of Josh Hart, local guy from Sidwell Friends. He had a career high for the playoffs in 24 points. He was 9 of 13 from the field. And there was a couple of controversial calls in this game that seemed to go against the Pacers, but sometimes that goes along with home court. And Dante DiVincenzo benefited from what looked like a real flop. And Stan Van Gundy, good for him for calling him out on TV. But he had an excellent game for the Knicks as well, 10 of 17 from the field, 25. I mean, going the Villanova route for the Knicks has really seemed to work out well for them. But don't count out the Pacers because they're really scrappy, and they still have to go back to Indiana, and as they say in the playoffs, it doesn't really start until the road team wins a game. And so it's 1-0 Knicks as they play Game 2 tomorrow night. The game I did not stay up for, which was only really worth watching because of the oh my God factor, and that is the Denver Nuggets, the defending champion Denver Nuggets, playing the upstart Minnesota Timberwolves. Now, I know Anthony Edwards is a superstar right now, and it seems like blasphemy, but there are the Michael Jordan comparisons that we've been hearing now for a couple of weeks. Had another good game, 11 of 17 from the field, 27 points. They also got 27 from Karl Anthony Towns, but most amazingly is that they did not have Rudy Gobert for the game. Gobert, their best defensive player. He had gone home to Minneapolis to be with his fiancée, who gave birth in the morning, and they were hoping to get him on a private plane to Denver in the afternoon, but there were high winds, and they just weren't able to get him there. So he didn't play, and even so, Nikola Jokic, who you'd think would go to town without Rudy in the lineup, he was not good last night. 5 of 13 from the field. He had 16 points. He did have 16 rebounds and 8 assists, but this was not a game where the assists and rebounds were important. They needed some scoring, and the Nuggets shot less than 35% from the field. They were 29 of 83, not good from three as well, 9 of 30, and just weren't able to take advantage of it. And in this day and age, to score 80 points in any game is remarkable. I mean, since the three-point shot has come in and the way the game is played these days, to be held to 80 points is incredible. And this was the post-game wrap-up with the Inside the NBA crew. It's Ernie Johnson, Shaq, Kenny, and Barkley looking at what they just saw, where the Denver Nuggets were taken down by the Minnesota Timberwolves quite easily, 106-80.
51% shooting for Minnesota. Points in the paint, 52-34. Points off turnover, 19-2 in favor of Minnesota. And they just absolutely hammer the champs, 106-80. I don't even know where you start, but I think the Minnesota defense would be a good place to start, Shaq.
Yeah, the defense was stifling all night. They played. They just came out. Listen, they got game one. They knew that they didn't want to mess around in game two, and they was all over the place. Guys out there playing their roles. This guy right here, McDaniel, had a hell of a game. Alexander also played great. The team played great. This is why they're the number one defense in the playoffs and in regular season. Stifling defense, and they just kept playing. They weren't complaining about calls. They were touching them up, roughing them up, running them over. That's how you got to play in the second round if you want to, move on, continue to move on.
They contest everything so aggressively, Kenny.
Yeah, contesting. The one thing that I'm surprised, not be surprised, but we were trying to figure out, between Murray, Gordon, and Porter, you would feel that they would be difficult to match up against with Jokic in the paint, creating possible double teams. That has probably been the easiest part, is them matching up with those three guys. And that's typically has been in their championship run last year, the deciding factor. Who's going to guard Porter? If you don't, you put the right guy on him. Don't put the right guy, he shoots threes and he kills you. You don't put the right guy on Gordon, he kills you on the offensive glass. He runs the lane and gets dunked. You don't put the right guy on Murray, he doesn't go 3 for 18, he goes 15 for 18. So that has probably been the most surprising thing, that they've outmatched the three guys that really take them over the top and be a championship team.
Well, I think the main thing, they're playing the Joker one-on-one. The Nuggets don't have but two guys that can get their own shots. That's Joker and Murray. Look at the team. Murray.
Just saying that negatively, they won a championship last year.
Yeah, because when guys would, Porter doesn't get shots on his own. He gets shots off Joker's double. Same thing with Aaron Gordon. They don't get the ball and go one-on-one. They only have two guys who get their own shot. Maybe a little bit Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, but they're playing the Joker one-on-one. They shut down Michael Porter because he's not getting wide open shots. Same thing with Aaron Gordon, but their perimeter defense, to play those guys one-on-one is pretty impressive. The length they play with, but man, we don't have them on that much. And you see, what are the number one defensive team?
And you're seeing why.
They are the number one defensive team.
Yeah, and they were last night, and maybe even for them above and beyond. Their coach is Chris Finch. He's coaching on crutches, having had knee surgery since the last round. And, he's got a team right now in a league that doesn't play defense. They're playing suffocating defense. And, again, we're last night. Here's Finch.
We've had some really, really good defensive efforts this year, but that has to be right up there with the best of them. On the ball, off the ball, the physicality, execution of the game plan, doing it over and over and over and over again requires like a physical and a mental toughness. They had that. I thought just really locked in on defense.
I think Rudy's absence did that even heighten everyone's awareness and focus, or what? How do you explain it without the best player on your floor defensively?
Well, listen, Rudy's driven a defensive culture here, and I think it's a testament to to his impact, his presence, and what he's infused into the team on how important defense is and how great we can be when we play it. That aside, we've always we expect to win no matter who's with us and who's not. And our guys truly believe that. And, we're very, 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 very happy for Rudy, extremely happy for him. And guys feel that way, but they're ready to go. It's just tweak a few things to the game plan and kind of just went at it.
Game 3 is coming up on Friday, and it's in Minnesota. It's a 2-0 lead for the Timberwolves, and just for historical purposes, in terms of what teams have done at 2-0, only 5 teams in league history have lost the first 2 games at home and have gone on to advance in the best-of-7 playoff series, according to research by ESPN. Lakers over the Rockets in 1969. That would have been the San Diego Rockets with rookie Elvin Hayes. The Rockets over the Phoenix Suns in 1994. That Rocket team went on to win the NBA championship. Mavericks over the Rockets in 2005. Celtics over the Bulls in 2017. And the Clippers over the Mavericks in 2021. So it doesn't happen very often, and they are sitting pretty. And Charles Barkley, who is prone to say these kind of things, says this about the series.
This series is a wrap. Minnesota is better than the Nuggets. No disrespect. They don't have an advantage. The MVP is getting outplayed. They don't have an advantage anywhere. Jamal Murray, I think he's still hurt a little bit, but other than that, they don't have an advantage anywhere. This series is a wrap. The Minnesota Timberwolves, I said before the season, I didn't believe in them. They have changed my mind 100%. They are going to win this series. I don't know who they're going to play. The other series could be very entertaining. But, man, they are for real. They have that guy. If you have that guy and that boy for that bulldog, he might as well be a damn wolf because he ain't messing around. He's like, boys, y'all come on and follow me. And the other guys are following him. But when you have a guy like that and you have some other good players, because no team is going to be good unless you have a guy. You don't think Jokic is a guy? He is a guy, but not this series. Them two guys, like, he couldn't even, think about this. He couldn't even dominate one of them. The other one's at home. Congratulations for having a baby. He couldn't even dominate when the other one was there. You know how rough it's going to be going to Minnesota against them two guys? Because you saw what happened in game one. And he didn't play tonight. I said, well, the Joker can dominate tonight because Rudy's not here. You never thought that Denver was going to win that game tonight. The Minnesota Timberwolves are for real. They're going to sweep the Denver Nuggets,
wow.
Period.
Sweep, wow. As far as the bench goes, and, of course, you're shortening the bench with Gobert out, the bench for Minnesota outscored Denver 35-23. And the frustration, they didn't talk about this, but the frustration was really showing last night on Denver as Jamal Murray shot 3 of 18, 0 for 4 from 3. And during the first half, I mean, this game is far from over. He's sitting on the bench. Karl Anthony Towns gets a pass from Kyle Anderson to put Minnesota up by 19 with 4:41 left in the second quarter. And he threw a heating pad on the floor. Now, a teammate, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, saw it, tossed it back to the sidelines. Play continued. Referees didn't see it. That's a very dangerous thing. You know, somebody could slip on that and tear a knee ligament. The lead referee in this said that he did not see it. That's Mark Davis. And he said, we weren't aware that it had come from the bench. If we would have been aware, we could have reviewed it under the hostile act trigger. There's a hostile act. The penalty would have been a technical foul. And you say, well, why don't you have an ejection? You can't have players throwing stuff on the court. He says for an ejection, we would have to determine that it was thrown directly at somebody versus thrown in frustration. Wow. I think you got to get a lid on that because that could be a very dangerous situation. But it looks like the defending champs are very, very frustrated right now, and the Minnesota Timberwolves are hitting on all cylinders offensively and defensively. And as Barkley said, they got the guy. They got the Bulldog who really didn't dominate last night. He had 27 points, but Towns also had 27. He only put up 17 shots, but he's leading the way. And they seem to have that big edge, both mentally and for a large part physically, even with Jokic. And once we get back to Minnesota for Friday night, we'll see what happens. So that was really stunning stuff last night. Didn't stay up to see it. Maybe you did, but I was interested to look at the highlights and the recap of it. Coming up, more react to the Brady roast from last night. Everybody's yakking about that. We'll get some behind-the-scenes stuff from the host of it, Jeff Ross, who was on the Rich Eisen show yesterday. We'll get to that and more. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
So you remember Dikembe Mutombo on the floor, clutching the ball in joy? That was 30 years ago today. It was the first time that an 8 seed had beaten a 1 seed. It was the Seattle Supersonics, believe it or not, who are now the Oklahoma City Thunder. They were the best team in the West, and they were playing the Denver Nuggets, who were the worst playoff team in the West, the 8th seed. And prior to that, an 8 had never beaten a 1. And the Denver Nuggets, who got worked in the first 2 games of the series, there was only 5, came back to win the last 3, the last one in overtime. And that image of Mutombo on the floor with the ball over his head, screaming in joy, is a memorable image. And we'll look back on that coming up in the next hour. Mike Callow's in for Tony today. Also in the next hour, Pat Riley. Boy, he took Jimmy Butler down yesterday in a news conference. You don't hear a team president talking about a star player like that very often, but you'll get to hear that. We'll also do some more on the Commanders. There's a former general manager who's now working, I guess, as an agent. His name is Jeff Diamond, was GM of the Vikings in the 90s, also president of the Tennessee Titans. He was on the John Keim podcast, and I pulled a couple of things that he said about Jayden Daniels and also changing the culture, and we'll get to that in the next hour. Meantime, as I mentioned, we started the show. I was at the Cigars and Curveballs fundraiser last night at Shelley's Back Room downtown with, I guess there were about 60 men there, not very many women. It was a fundraiser for the D.C. Grays, a wooden bat league team that plays in the District of Columbia. Not a big cigar smoker, so didn't smoke a cigar and had to throw all my clothes in the wash when I got home, but really good time. And what I was amazed at, all these men who are sports fans, the number one topic of conversation was the Brady roast and the many great lines that were fired off, including this one by the roastie himself.
We got so many great football greats here tonight, but where's Roger Goodell? I know. Remember Deflategate? The NFL spent $20 million and found that it was more probable than not, that I was generally aware that someone may have deflated my footballs. You could have just given me the $20 million and I would just told you I did it.
So that was the mild stuff, but there were things in there that people were, whoa, I can't believe he said that, but it apparently was no holds barred. Now, the only thing that drew some attention as to maybe they went too far is Jeff Ross, who was hosting it and is a professional stand-up comedian, had told a joke about Bob Kraft. He had said, something to the effect that when Brady was drafted by the Patriots in the 6th round in 2000, he told Bob Kraft that he was, it was the greatest move he ever made or something like that. And then Kraft said, "You want a massage?" And then Brady was seen going over to Ross, and it looked like he said, "Don't say that S anymore." This is Rich Eisen yesterday with Ross on the show on that question, which people are continuing to ask: did Brady really tell him to shut up? Here's Ross.
The one thing people are wondering about today, was Brady really pissed about you making a crack towards a massage joke?
Come on.
No?
Come on.
No?
No way. No way.
Because he came up, he said, "Knock that S off, Jeff."
He's having fun.
Okay, good. Fantastic.
Having fun, it's like, that's his dad, that's like, Robert Kraft is like a father figure to him, he was just showing his love for Robert Kraft, and Robert Kraft loved it. We had a great talk afterwards, and he was so happy that I gave him a shout out and a salute. It was beautiful.
It was. So when did this come together? Like, because a lot of folks are wondering why Brady would subject himself, or sit for this. What's the genesis of this, Jeffrey?
Well, there's a couple things. He loves the roast. He's a student of the roast.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that, like, if you love the roast, everyone wants to be the center of attention, even when there's a target on their back. And in this case, it's all about him for 3 hours. And it was something I asked of him. I asked him after he won the last Super Bowl. I hit him up. I knew he was a roast fan. And, then he was into it right away. And then we made a deal, and then he unretired, and I held it back till he retired again. And then we held it again till the Netflix is a joke festival, so that all the comics would be in town. And I think it was worth the wait, because he was loose and fun, and man, I feel like we won an election or something. Like, I can't believe it. We got through this 3-year campaign to get Tom Brady in the hot seat.
And it's not just that. The people that came back, for him, from Belichick to Gronk and Edelman, and then to have Kraft there also, and some of his former teammates and the comedians you got together, to get Ron Burgundy introducing Bill Belichick was genius. That was fantastic. I didn't see that one coming. I did not see that one coming.
I don't think Tom did either.
See, he didn't know, right? You kept him in the dark on everything, pretty much?
I kept him in the dark on a lot of the surprises, and he didn't hear anybody's jokes. And even though he was a producer on the show, shout out to Tom's company and Casey Patterson's company, and Netflix. Like it was all hands on deck for this one. And Tom has a great team around him, and he abided by the rules of the roast, which was basically anything goes, and surprised me. And I got to give the guy credit, man. He really did it.
Yeah. Anything goes. If you're going to say anything goes, then anything goes. And this is what Ross said he told Brady before the roast started.
Because if you're having fun, everyone will have fun. And I think a couple of jokes might have stung out of the gate, but once he realized that he was in for it, and it's all for love, we only roast the ones we love. You know that, Rich?
Yes, sir.
That's my motto and my mission. I think he was down for it, and I think he earned his rebuttal. And by the way, I made a prediction last week that he would have the best set, that he would win his own roast, and I was so blown away by his rebuttal at the end. 3 hours in, man, not a lot of guys would hold up under that pressure of an arena, following all those arena acts and then murdering his rebuttal.
When he told Belichick about the ring, his favorite ring, it wasn't the next one, it was the Ring camera that caught him coming out of that girl's house or his girlfriend's house or something like that. Oh my God, that one killed me. It slayed me, man.
The helmets are off, man. These guys are, Tom Brady's been talking smack since he's a kid playing football, on the field, off the field, locker rooms. Yeah. Like, it kind of comes to natural to the players in general. I've roasted other, athletes before, but football players really have a knack for smack talk. And on top of that, Brady's always been, it seems like, as I get to know him, always an underdog. Even as a winner, people underestimate him. They say he's not the best. He's not this. He's not going to come back. He's not going to unretire. He's not going to win another Super Bowl. He's going to move to Florida. He's not going to win. Then he wins. I feel like him especially knows how to take a joke. He has thick skin, and we're all sensitive, and maybe, he's a human being, but the way he took those hits last night, man, that's for the ages right there.
So that's Jeff Ross hosted it, and again, you heard him say that, no, Brady really wasn't upset when he made the Robert Kraft joke. There's one more post-game conversation that I want to play, and that was with the leadoff roaster, the man who, I guess, sort of created Tom Brady with the unfortunate injury that he had in the 2001 season, Drew Bledsoe. So he was the first roaster, told a really good joke, which you're going to hear, and how it all came together, talking to Dan Patrick yesterday.
Buddy, you have more rings than I do, but I've experienced a couple things that you will never experience. The feeling of being the number one overall draft pick in the NFL. And a 28th wedding anniversary. It was yesterday.
Ouch. That was such a good payoff. You paused appropriately. You did great there. How nervous were you?
The funny thing, Dan, a lot of people ask me that going into the thing. So there's going to be a lot of people watching. And I'm like, you know what? I speak in public all the time. I never prepare anything ever. So I was more prepared for that one than I'd been for speaking in public for quite a while. But it was still, they made me go first, man. They made me. I was the sacrificial lamb. I had to go up there and try to make everybody else feel comfortable.
All right, tell me about rehearsal. How much rehearsal? Yeah, and is Brady involved in rehearsal?
No, he was not there, man. I think there were a lot of us. I showed up very, very late for rehearsal. I had a wine deal up in Walla Walla, so I got there at the very end. So nobody got to hear anybody else's material before the whole thing started. So we just got up and kind of read through the script that we put together, and And that was kind of it. But it was, man, it was fun though, man. It was funny as hell.
What was it like though, with somebody writing jokes for you? And Brady's he's going to still take it like you're saying this about him, even though somebody's helping you write these jokes.
No, the truth is, it was mostly my material. We worked with the. So I'll own it. I'm not passing this off on anybody else. Now, we went back and forth with the writers, but the funny thing is, a lot of the stuff that they sent me, we ended up throwing out and giving to other people, and we did mostly our own material.
Wow, I like that. But the anniversary line was awesome, and you waited after the applause before you dropped the hammer.
Yeah, I mean, look, the truth is, we're talking about Tom Brady, right? There's, you can't really make fun of his career. You can't. So you have to dig deep. You have to dig deep. So, can't make fun of him for not winning like 9 Super Bowls. So we got to jump into the personal stuff. But yeah, it was pretty fun.
What was it like after the roast, though, when everybody said what they've said about Brady, and then do you get together?
Yeah, we had a little party afterward at the Forum, and then the reason my voice sounds like it does right now is that after that we ended up at the Comedy Store, and we were in a little private back room, and Dave Chappelle got on stage, so we didn't get home until about 3:30 in the morning. So yeah, I'm on pretty short time, man. That's why I sound a little rough this morning.
Okay, does Brady go up to people and? I mean, how can you not take some of that personally?
Yeah, if you sign up for a roast, it's just like you know that the gloves are coming off. I was a bit worried for him, and it got a little rough. But it's kind of what you sign up for when you're going to do that. The funny thing though is I was talking with one of his people, and she said, she goes, his perspective is that this is nothing that hasn't been said already. Like, he's heard all of this stuff, so he might as well just get it out there in public and make it funny, because if you can laugh at it, then it doesn't hurt as bad.
Give me the joke that made you cringe.
Oh, geez, man, there were so many. Let's see, I'm trying to think. Hold on. Give me a second.
Edelman was on fire last night.
Oh, dude, Edelman was on fire. Gronk was just, and we all appreciate Gronk because he gets to just be Gronk. And the funny thing is, we're sitting up there on the stage, and we can see the teleprompter, and Gronk was so far off script that we did not know if he was coming back. Like, he was out wandering in the wilderness. And
how real is what we see, or how he's treated or talked about? Like, Gronk, he played football.
Oh, he's dumb like a fox. You know that. We can, you can all see through it. I mean, the dude's really smart, works his ass off, but he also understands that that's kind of his shtick, right? So one thing I was worried about, and I will be honest about this, until like just before the show, I thought that Thomas folks were going to be there. Like, his mom was supposed to be sitting right in front of the stage. And I was like, man, I mean, it's all fun and games until you're looking at your buddy's mom sitting right in front of you as you're saying just this awful, awful stuff about him. But, Nikki Glaser, dude, she's a trained killer. I told her, I think she's like a Bond villain. She's really, really pretty and also just an assassin. So, some of that stuff was pretty funny.
How was it with Belichick, your interactions with him?
Bill is Bill, and he's always Bill. And when you get him, when you get him out of the office, he can actually be pretty funny and pretty engaging. But man, he still really, really likes to talk about football. And even though he doesn't have a job, like we had to do this cold open deal where me and him and Tommy had to go film this little bit before we did the show, and we ended up standing back there, and we're just kind of having a conversation. Next thing you know, we're breaking down defenses and talking about college football programs. I'm like, all right, dude, come on. You don't even have a football job right now. And this is still all we're going to talk about. But no, I thought it was cool. I didn't know he was sort of like a last minute ad, but it was great that he was there. It was fun.
So that's Drew Bledsoe post-gaming with Dan Patrick on the Tom Brady roast, which has created a lot of interest, a lot of discussion, and I don't even know if we're done with talking about it, but we'll see. I mean, just amazed at how much of the conversation last night in the gathering I was at was about the roast. But we're going to move on to other things. In next hour, more yak about the Commanders as Jeff Diamond, former GM with the Minnesota Vikings, was on with John Keim, his observations of what he saw of him coming out of school and what the forecast is for the Commanders. And also, it was 30 years ago today that an 8 beat a 1 for the first time, and Dikembe Mutombo clutched the ball in joy. Stay with us. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Little adjustment in the Tony schedule this week, so he's doing Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Mike Callow coming up at 11 o'clock for Tony. So I'm going to take you back to 2002. This was Steve Spurrier's first year as the Redskins coach, and there were some things that Spurrier didn't really care about. Let's put it that way. He cared about his ball plays, calling plays. Didn't really even care much about his defense because he couldn't remember some of the names of the players. But he holds his first minicamp. Wasn't rookie minicamp. It was minicamp. And players come trotting out on the field, and here come the quarterbacks. Why, there's Danny Werfel wearing number 7. And there's Shane Matthews wearing number 9. Well, no one had worn number 7 since Joe Theismann played his last game in 1985, and no one had worn number 9 since Sonny Jurgensen played his last game in 1974. This was long before Sonny's number was officially retired, which happened at the end of the 2022 season. And people who were in the media looked at that and said, wow, look at that. There's Sonny's number, and there's Theismann's number. Those had never been given out before. What's going on here? And Spurrier was asked about it after the practice, and he said, I don't know. I haven't paid that much attention, just numbers. Well, people did notice because, they didn't want Theismann's number back in circulation. They certainly didn't want Sonny's number back in circulation. He was in the Hall of Fame at that point. And so the way this went was Werfel went, okay, I'll switch it. He switched to 17. Matthews was a little bit more belligerent about it. He liked number 9 and wanted to keep it. And they said, well, why don't you talk to Sonny Jurgensen? And Sonny, who was still doing the radio for the team at that point, talked to Matthews. And he said, look, I don't care whether you wear the number. That's fine with me. But the fan base, they care. And they're going to be pretty rough on you if you choose to keep that number. So he switched it to number 6. Now we got a different kind of number issue here, and that is that the longest tenured player on the team is Tress Way and has worn number 5 since he came here in 2014. The number 1 draft choice for the team is Jayden Daniels. They hope that he becomes the face of the franchise. They hope that by the time he finishes his career, no one will ever wear number 5 again other than Jayden Daniels. That's his number. So what to do about that? Now, this happens all the time when you have punters especially, because punters come and go, and quarterbacks, it's a bigger deal. But this is a guy who's, for better or for worse, over this 10-year period, Tress Way has been the one constant. They've had a lot of churn and burn at different positions, but he has stayed and has played well, and he's a great guy, great with fans and the community and so forth. So there's a report now that Tress Way and Jayden Daniels have produced a video that's going to come out on Friday, which is when the team opens rookie minicamp. I mean, you don't have to be a math genius to put 2 and 2 together or 2 and 3 together and come up with 5, and 5 will almost certainly belong to Jayden Daniels. I think it's fine. I guess Tress Way is going to be fine with it. Maybe he's going to wear 15 or some other number. I don't know. But these are things that people get worked up about. They are going to retire Darryl Green's number 28 during the season. Bobby Mitchell's number is retired, and that was a travesty that took place during the Dan Snyder Spurrier years, because in that 2002 season, when they made Danny Werfel switch to 17 and Shane Matthews switch to 6, there was a backup tight end named Leonard Stevens who wore number 49, which had been out of circulation since Bobby Mitchell retired in 1968, and nothing was ever said. I sent emails to the PR department alerting them to this, that this was wrong. Nobody ever did anything. Bobby retired at the end of the season. He said the final slight was that they gave his number to a tight end, and he didn't want to say anything because he didn't want to do anything to upset the young player. That's the kind of person that he was. And finally, when the George Floyd tragedy happened, and people were very, very responsive to racial issues and so forth, the team said, "Oh yeah, we're going to retire Bobby Mitchell's 49." So anyway, some people get really caught up in this. I try not to, but it's worth noting that this is a thing. Number 5 is a thing, and be ready on Friday when they open up minicamp that people are going to say, "Hey, that's Tress Way's number. Why'd they give that to Jayden Daniels?" Well, there's a reason for that. They hope that the pick they made at number 2 is going to be a really great pick. And if you listen to others around the league, it looks like they're getting applause for what they did. Jeff Diamond was the general manager of the Minnesota Vikings in the 90s. He was the GM when that team went 15-1, should have been in the Super Bowl, but Gary Anderson missed a kick. Falcons won in overtime, and the Falcons went on to play the Denver Broncos. But off of that, he got another job as the president of the Tennessee Titans. He's been retired from that for, I think, 20 years, but does a lot of consulting. He does some work as an agent, and he was on the John Keim podcast the other day reacting to what the Commanders did in taking Jayden Daniels number 2.
I think could well end up being a better player than Caleb Williams, because I like his attitude. I like his approach a lot more than Caleb Williams. I think Caleb Williams is a very entitled player, and someone's got to rein that in Chicago. So we'll see how that plays out. But I think for the Commanders, they may well have gotten the guy they preferred at quarterback. Now, Jayden Daniels has some work to do. He's got to learn a system. He's got to, I think, bulk up a little bit to be able to absorb the hits he's going to take in the NFL. But I'm sure the Commanders are already starting with that whole learning process and get him training and get him stronger. And so it doesn't turn into another RG3 situation.
So let's stick on the quarterback, because I was going to ask you, and I'll get back to like their plan and the approach for the offseason. But with Jayden, like, what are some of the things that you saw on him, even on film, that just jumped? I mean, some of the stuff is obvious, right? But what are some of the little things that you saw that separated him from others?
Well, I think just his dual threat ability, and that it's kind of unfair to make comparisons to current NFL quarterbacks. I know everybody's talking about Lamar Jackson and Jayden Daniels. Lamar might be a little thicker kind of athlete, shall we say, and Jayden maybe a little more slight at this point. But if he gets beefed up and bulks up a little bit, I think that he'll be in a better position, as I said before, to absorb the hits he's going to take. And obviously, you got to be careful in the NFL, and so many quarterbacks have had to learn that lesson the hard way in terms of protecting themselves when they run and being smart with their decision making, and as Patrick Mahomes had to do early in his career, and Lamar did too, I think, in Baltimore, in terms of making decisions how he's going to protect himself. And I think Jayden Daniels is going to have to learn that too, so that he doesn't get hurt. But I think in terms of the Commanders' approach to the offseason and to Jayden Daniels, he's got the arm, he's got the legs, he's got, I think, the ability to grasp an NFL offense, and obviously had great success at LSU last year.
Did you brought up with Caleb, maybe is he entitled? You didn't hear that with Jayden. So what, do you see things that led you to that kind of thought, and that maybe like that Jayden might be better, and if he is, that way, if the way he is?
Yeah, well, I think just his approach to the combine, his approach to pro day, Jayden showed up, Caleb didn't. And I think just the whole attitude coming out of Caleb Williams. Well, I'm going to do physicals for who I want to do them for. I'm going to work out for who I want to work out for. You didn't hear that out of Jayden Daniels. And I think that was smart. I think he's got good representation that is advising him well of how to present himself to teams and to the league and to the fan base. And so I think he walks in the door and even to the locker room. And I know the Bears players are saying, oh, it's no big deal. Jayden or Caleb will be fine. But there's got to be a little bit of an undercurrent there. Like, hey, this guy really thinks he's hot stuff, and he hasn't even done a thing yet in the NFL, and wasn't as good last year at USC as he was the year before. And everybody saw that Notre Dame game when he threw 3 interceptions and they lost by 4 touchdowns. So, yeah, Jayden had some tough games in the SEC too. That's going to happen in the best conference in football. But I just like his persona. I like his approach and how he handled the whole pre-draft process.
There were a lot of people who were like, oh, well, he had this is his 5th year. He steadily progressed and had a really good last year, obviously. It's funny because I think for some fans who didn't want him, they were concerned by that. I think this team really liked the fact that he kept working to get better or kept improving. What was your take on that?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think guys that stay in school a little bit longer, I think they mature a little bit. and he had to learn different systems during his college years. And so I think that plays to his benefit.
That's Jeff Diamond, former GM of the Minnesota Vikings with John Keim. And the takeaway for me is, yeah, he's hearing a lot of things about Caleb Williams that they will probably avoid here. Maybe it won't be a big deal. Maybe it will be. Who knows? But sounds like in terms of talent, it's close enough. And the fact that there aren't these, kind of red flags, things that Caleb Williams didn't want to do. His father reportedly questioning the idea of maybe getting part ownership of the team, things like that. So in an organization that has had probably more drama than any other franchise in the last 25 years, that serenity is welcomed. And that ties into what Ron Rivera kept saying he was doing over the last 4 years, but probably didn't do, and that was change the culture. Well, now they've changed a lot of the players, which, brings up the question to Jeff Diamond, does that change the culture?
I think when you have as many new players and a new coach, a new coaching staff, everything is new. And yeah, it's going to take time for the trust factor to build, for there to be a feeling of progression. But I think everybody has to feel that. And I think they can build that quote unquote team chemistry very quickly in OTAs, minicamp, training camp, as even the veteran players see that the talent level has improved on this football team, and starting at the quarterback position, which is the most important position of all.
And when you look at the NFC East, and you brought it up earlier, where do you think Washington stacks up in terms of just going at this point in the year? Because we're talking May 2nd, we're talking, but where do they stack up now, and how might they stack up in a couple years from now, do you think?
Yeah, I think that, as I said, Philadelphia is a team that really, I thought, had maybe the best draft in the league, or one of the best drafts, and they had that collapse at the end of last season. But their big problem was their pass defense, and then they add these corners in the first couple of rounds, and just still have a lot of young players coming on, the Jalen Carters of the world, and so forth. And Jalen Hurts didn't have as good a year, and I think he'll be better this coming season. And then they lock up their great receivers, A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, for many years to come. And so, yeah, I think the Eagles and the Saquon Barkley factor there, if he can stay healthy, that's certainly a big threat that they have, which again, I think one of the really beneficial things in free agency is when you can sign a premier free agent from one of the teams in your division, you weaken that team, strengthen your team. It's a double whammy, more or less. And I think that's what the Eagles accomplished with Barkley, if he can stay healthy. And that's always the question with him. So where do the Commanders stack up? It's hard to say at this point. I think you got to say certainly the Eagles and Cowboys are 1-2, and then the Giants, if Daniel Jones comes back healthy, and with some of the additions such as Neighbors, the Giants go in as the third team right now, and they were a playoff team 2 years ago. They could rebound. We'll see. So I think the Commanders are still a notch under them starting out. But again, if Jayden Daniels is this year's C.J. Stroud, it can change really quickly.
Yes, and can. Jeff Diamond, former GM of the Minnesota Vikings, while he's given them a lot of attaboys on what they did in the draft, he's still picking Washington for number 4 in the division. But, allows for the fact that they may have drafted a gem, and if he's C.J. Stroud, everything changes. It's a league based on quarterbacks. If you get the right one, everything looks different. Tom Boswell's popped up. Boswell retired from the Post a couple of years ago, but when he gets excited about something in baseball, he writes a column, and he's got one today about the Nationals, who are 17-17. Nobody's talking really World Series about them, but he says, take a look. This is much like it was in 2011 as they started to develop into a contender. And that was a really bizarre year. If you remember this, it was June, and they were playing pretty well. They were over 500. They had Jim Riggleman as the manager. They had won, I think, 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 11, something like that. And Riggleman wanted a contract extension. They didn't want to give it to him. And so he said, well, I can't manage this team if I don't have a contract into next season. So he walked away. He quit. He quit on his team. And that's when Davey Johnson came in, managed the rest of the 2011 season, and in 2012, he had a team that was in the playoffs. So Boswell says, look at what's going on here with the young players. Those teams had young players that were developing and eventually developed into a team that was a contending team. He says, in the past 100 games since mid-July of last year, the Nats are 50-50. That alone deserves attention for a team that has so much of its future still playing in the minor leagues. But the news is better than that. Last year, the Nats' final 33-33 push required scrappiness and a few wins worth good luck and good managing. So he's looking at the 17-17 this year. They haven't been lucky. 2/3, he says, of the projected opening day lineup has had significant injuries. Josiah Gray, Keibert Ruiz, Lane Thomas, Nick Senzel, Victor Robles, and Joey Gallo. Last year's RBI leader, Joey Meneses, has 0 homers. Patrick Corbin tries, but his ERA is 6.45 and doesn't even profile as a plausible lefty reliever on a team that has none. It says, despite all this, the Nats have an MLB-leading 12 come-from-behind wins. Their dugout is usually so enthusiastic that coaches Gerardo Parra and Sean Doolittle, those energizers in the 2019 champs, seem to fit right in. And he also talks about something that they do, which has been, lost in baseball for a long time. It's back in some ways because of the rules, which allow limited pickoff attempts for a pitcher and the fact that the bases are a little bit bigger, but they're on pace, he says, for 272 stolen bases just behind the Reds. And the rules help, he says, but neither Maury Wills nor Lou Brock nor Ricky Henderson ever played on a team that stole 272 bases. Wow. All those guys had 100 or more steals in a year. So, yeah, that's something to pay attention to. And as far as, maybe a great run at the end, Boswell writes, last year, Arizona made the playoffs with just 84 wins, then reached the World Series. The Diamondbacks were awful in 2021, 110 losses, then went 74 and 88 and 22. Now they're 15 and 20 and looking poorly, but where did 23 come from? Do they get to keep the flag? And he says he counted 11 vets on the Nats who signed contracts for not much more than the rookie minimum so they could stay in the game and play their way into another contract next year, anywhere. He says someday maybe the Nats will have Wood, Cruz, Brady House, and Robert Hassel, Cade Cavalli, and Harleen Susana, plus $100 million free agents. Might be quite a team or not quite. Either way, the Nats of the past 100 games have been quite different in their unnoticed way, quite entertaining, often quite promising. They're not yet must-see TV, but if you look away, there's no telling what you'll see. And C.J. Abrams is developing into a star. I said to, as I drop a name, I said to Mike Rizzo last night, you got to get him locked up to a long-term contract. He said, it is a long-term contract. We got control of him, in the 6 years of his rookie contract. So there's that. They're fun. And I'm looking forward to watching the Orioles and the Nats play Game 1 of the 2-game series tonight. Coming up, 30 years ago today, we had the Denver Nuggets as an 8th seed upset the top seed Seattle Sonics, which had never happened before. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
So 30 years ago, the best coaches in the NBA were considered to be Phil Jackson and Pat Riley. Phil had just come off the three-peat with the Chicago Bulls. Michael Jordan was spending the year in retirement, playing baseball. There were some who followed the NBA who said, including Peter Vesey, who has been a league aficionado for many, many years. He said, oh, no, Mike's not coming back. And as a matter of fact, he did late in the following season. But at that point, he was retired, and the door was open for other teams. And that year and the following year, the Houston Rockets took advantage of it and won the championships both years. But the best team in the West was coached by George Karl, and that was the Seattle Supersonics. And Karl was considered to be on a level with Jackson and Riley. He had had good success with teams in Cleveland before. He may have coached someplace else, but he was a big star in his prime in the coaching profession. And they're taking on the upstart Denver Nuggets in the first round of the playoffs, and they got a second-year coach in Dan Issel. Dan Issel is one of the greatest players in the history of the league and arguably the best player that the Nuggets ever had. I would say David Thompson, but he's in the conversation. Great player at Kentucky and a great player in the ABA and the NBA, mostly with the Denver Nuggets. And he was the coach, and not much was expected, especially when they lost the first 2 games of the series, best of 5. So they went down 0-2, lost both games by double digits, and nobody's paying attention to the Nuggets after that. But they come back, and they win Game 3, and then they pull out an overtime win in Game 4. So now it's 2-2. They're playing in Seattle, the Seattle Center Coliseum, on this day in 1994, exactly 30 years ago today. And at that point, Denver's gaining confidence despite a record of 42-40 during the regular season. They were 21 games worse than the Sonics, but because of the success that they had in Game 3 and 4, they had great confidence in this. And they wind up taking the Seattle Sonics to overtime. And as Dick Enberg called it on NBC, they won the game.
And Perkins shoots the 2, blocked by Brian Williams, recovered by Gill. 8 seconds, Perkins batted back out. McMillan, another 3, way short. That's it. Mutombo embraces the ball, and the unlikely upset, one of the great upsets in NBA playoff history. The 8th seed, a team that was 2 games over 500 on the season. The Denver Nuggets, youngest in the NBA, have beaten the team with the best record in the NBA, the Seattle Supersonics. And Dikembe Mutombo, one of the stars.
And Dikembe Mutombo embraces the ball. You see Mutombo lying on the floor. He got the last rebound, and he's squeezing the ball because they pulled this off. He was great defensively. He had 15 rebounds, 8 block shots, played 45 minutes. No. He was terrific in that game, and the Denver Nuggets move on. Dan Issel, the winning coach, and he was pretty comfortable sitting down at the broadcast table because he had been doing games, I think either on TNT or ESPN, whatever, but he was familiar with how the broadcast worked. He put a headset on, and he talked to Dick Enberg and Steve Snapper Jones. Sadly, they're both gone, but they were the broadcast team doing the game on NBC, and this was Issel basking in the glow of victory.
And we're with Dan Issel, the University of Kentucky star, who told us yesterday that in the last 21 years, you've seen every Kentucky Derby either in person or on television. The last time that you did see when you picked Sham, and that was the year Secretariat won. Hey, they called you the horse, and on Derby Day, you need some roses around your neck.
I'll tell you what. I hope I miss a whole lot more of the Kentucky Derbies. This is a whole lot more fun than going to the Derby. But I'll tell you guys something. I did this for 4 years, over here with you all before I start coaching this team. You don't sweat as much over here as you do over
Well,
there.
you are wringing wet, and probably the biggest reason is time. Your team had trouble watching the clock today.
Well, I think that showed our inexperience, Steve. I think that in the big games, you lose sight of the shot clock. You really don't know exactly what's happening. You're trying to get to the basket, but I couldn't be proud of our kids. They did a great job. The first game in this building was a throwaway. We stood and watched. We were observers, not participants. But the next 4 games, we played the best team in the NBA head on head.
Hey, Coach, 4 times a 24-second violation in overtime, and you still win the game. Would you have believed that?
No, but we did the same thing in the overtime in Game 4 in Denver. They had a difficult time scoring against our set defense, and we didn't let them get any runouts in the overtime.
Well, you're in the winner's circle. I know you. Well, we're going to go to Hannah, but we have a chance to ask you. Now you're going to play Utah at Utah. How'd you do during the regular season? 1-3, I think, against Utah.
Yeah, we didn't play Utah very well, but we didn't play Seattle very well here either, Dick, and we got one.
Oh, my. Dan Issel and the Denver Nuggets. Ladies and gentlemen, you've seen a part of NBA history. This is an upset they'll be talking about for many, many years.
And 30 years later, we're still talking about it, Dick Enberg. Oh, my, as the Denver Nuggets won. Now, they lost to Utah in the next round in 7 games. And the rest of the coaching career for Dan Issel didn't go so well, although it's pretty remarkable what happened in the following years. The next year, he got fired 34 games into the season. They pulled this enormous upset in the playoffs. I guess the expectations were higher. So he's fired 34 games into the 1994-95 season. He comes back as head coach of the Denver Nuggets in 1999. He had 2 losing seasons and was fired 26 games into the 01-02 season. Never coached again. 6 years coaching the Nuggets. His record 180 and 208. But the one shining moment winning that playoff series 30 years ago today, the first 8 seed to knock off a number 1. Let me finish with this. I like these anyway. I don't know if you do, but I've always liked Rick Riley. Wrote for a long time for Sports Illustrated, worked for ESPN. I read something several years ago where he said, "Oh, I'm done. I'll never write again." Now he's back writing in the Post. He writes editorials from time to time. And he's writing about Nikola Jokic of the Nuggets. The timing isn't great because Jokic was bottled up last night as the defending champs went down 0-2 as they got clobbered by Minnesota, scored only 80 points. So throwing bouquets at Nikola Jokic right now is, maybe not great timing. But Riley's funny, and he writes this. He says, if you don't have a life coach, but I know who I'd want, it would be a pasty, puffy 29-year-old who can't jump over a 4 of clubs, wears a $9 haircut, and is bored with his job. He's talking about Nikola Jokic, the Nuggets 6'11", hesitant hoops hero. But the thing I like most about him is he doesn't want to be a hero. And you've probably heard these things from Jokic before. He said, when I finish my career, I really wish nobody will know me. He wants to be a normal person who could live in the moment. He said, and this is Riley, he says, there's some moment he's living in right now. He has the Nuggets with a shot to repeat as NBA champions. He's pretty much a lock to win his 3rd MVP. And yet you ask him about it, he looks like somebody who was just stabbed in the knee with a melon fork. He says, I love him. All the things he doesn't do. He doesn't have Facebook, X, Insta, TikTok. He has no social media accounts. Is there another star in pro sports like that? When he retires, his goal is not to have a phone. He says, and this is Riley talking about Jokic, he's just wonderfully odd. Seems to have wandered out of a YMCA lunchtime game somewhere, but he throws passes off the backboard to teammates, passes to guys 180 degrees behind him, passes through defenders' legs, around their necks, under the armpits. He launches long bomb football passes and fashions left-handed behind the back, no-look David Blaine passes. He's a nugget that comes with all kinds of sauce. He said somebody asked him if he was looking forward to the victory parade. I remember this after last year when they won the championship. He looked around and he said, when is the parade? Thursday. He goes, no, I need to go home. And Riley writes, who reigns on his own parade? Home is the sleepy town in Serbia where Jokic drinks beer, rides his bike, and dotes on family-owned horses for harness racing. That sport, he says, is his passion. The Trotters might feel otherwise as he crams his 285 pounds into a sulky. The Joker may not want to be remembered, but it's too late for that. He's a Hall of Famer, first ballot guaranteed. Don't bet against the fat boy, he once said. I never will. Well, again, this was written before the Nuggets went down 0-2 last night. Will they be able to get back on track in Minnesota? I mean, everything changes once, there's a one-game swing. And, if they come out and they make adjustments, but again, they're going to have Rudy Gobert coming back. Gobert wasn't there last night for Minnesota because he was home with his fiancée as she was giving birth to his child, and because of high winds, they couldn't fly him back in time for Denver for last night. So Charles Barkley has said this is going to be a sweep, that it's over with. I don't know. I mean, we could see different things happen, and as we've just recapped, it could flow the other way as we looked at Denver as the 8th seed 30 years ago, coming back from 0-2 and not playing well in their first 2 games and winning 3 straight. If they go back to Denver 2-2, I think you probably got to like the Nuggets again. But they're a frustrated bunch. Jamal Murray threw a heating pad on the floor, went unnoticed by the referees. That could have resulted in big problems. That could have resulted in him being not a technical foul, but not being thrown out of the game, it appears, unless he was throwing it at somebody. I don't know how that rule works. But it is what it is. So I'm really liking the NBA playoffs. Didn't watch a whole lot of regular season, especially with the Wizards stinking. But these games have been fun, and we got 2 new series starting tonight, and the early game tonight, and I guess these are the ESPN games, right? No, still on TNT. So it's Cleveland at Boston, the 7 o'clock game, and then Dallas at Oklahoma City. That could be the really good game. Unfortunately, it's a 9:30 start. I don't think that Boston's going to have a whole lot of problems with Cleveland, but you never know. I thought that Denver wouldn't have a whole lot of problems with Minnesota, so we'll see. Also, Orioles tonight. Orioles and the Washington Nationals, Battle of the Beltways. That's something we're looking forward to. 6:45 start. Our coverage here tonight will start at 6 o'clock. Mike Callow sits in for Tony next, and I will see you back here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.